So I actually have a bit of a follow-up to that one, Casey, and I'm no offense, Dimitri, I'm actually very curious on Casey's thoughts on this one. In 2024, GDC started doing this survey asking about the perceptions of AI inside of the game development space. And in 2024, 18% of the developers held a negative view on Gen AI. In 2025, 30% of the developers at GDC had a negative view on AI. In 2026, it's now at 52% have a negative view, and only 7% have a positive view. Is there is this like a special unique thing to games, because games does contain a bit more art than the average programming, shall we say? Is this like a special games thing, or is this actually a momentum change that people are feeling due to, hey, you must use this is the greatest thing ever, you have to use it, therefore, and then you start using it, and you're like, okay, well, it's great here, it's bad, and you feel this giant disconnect from Twitter, because I have my own opinions that are largely formed because of how much I hate what Twitter has to say.
I mean, obviously, I can't speak for people who are taking that survey. I mean, they know what they were thinking when they checked the boxes or pushed whatever they pushed. But I think, as I've said before, I think it's very difficult to separate out people's opinions of Gen AI, the technology, from Gen AI, the people and the companies. And I think when we look at things like negative surveys, I will say I'm right there with them. I have nothing but disdain for this sort of current moment, but that's not based on an objective look at generative AI and where I think it's going. It's based more on the behavior, the legal behavior, the attitude. It's based on, like many things, when, we're humans, we make decisions largely based on what we think the intentions are of the people who are in charge of things. Because at the end of the day, like, that's, if we have a really good feeling about someone who's running something, we are less concerned about that thing than if we have a really bad feeling about it, right? And so I would suspect that a lot of it comes from there. And that, especially like you said, there's more artistry in games. There's a lot more people making art assets, a lot of more people making music, making sound effects, making narratives. And, the behavior with respect to that of the AI companies has been utterly deplorable, right? I mean, I've said this many, many times on Twitter. It's pure disdain for the law, no concern about what they were doing. They basically just made a decision. We're just going to do what we're going to do, and we'll deal with the lawsuits later. Was clearly what they decided. I mean, I don't have evidence that they literally decided that in a meeting, but their external behavior makes that clear. If they had been at all concerned about whether they were breaking the law, they would have done a lot of things first that they didn't do.
Facebook actually was caught with emails saying, this is illegal, right? Yes, this is. Don't do it on a company computer, idiot.
Multiple of them. Like, now, if you look in their in-court documents, multiple of these AI companies are on the record as having known they stole things. Not about fair use or anything, like just literally pirated.
Yeah, they weren't like, this is transformative. They're
no,
like, no,
there's none of
stealing.
that. There's like, we are literally taking an illicit step to acquire data, and we know there's multiple companies that are now in court records, like, they have that evidence, right? So,
hey, is that HTTP? Get that out of here. That's not how we order coffee. We order coffee via SSH terminal.shop. Yeah, you want a real experience? You want real coffee? You want awesome subscriptions so you never have to remember again? Oh, you want exclusive blends with exclusive coffee and exclusive content? Then check out Cron. You don't know what SSH is? Well, maybe the coffee's not for you.
Terminal coffee in hand, living the dream.
GitHub could have just filtered out non-permissively licensed stuff to train Copilot, for example. Like, that's that's the easiest one, and that's one of the ones where it's the easiest. Like, you own the search thing that you're doing to find the code. You could have clicked your own checks. It's not like, oh, we just crawled the internet and we got back 10 million things.
One of the primary things that these LLMs are good at is understanding language. They all now are at the point where they could analyze their own training data set and assign a probability of legality to each document. That could be done today. For all I know, they have done this, right?
100% legal for my company to use.
As long as you don't distill it from us, it's legal. Okay, but if
so
you
that
took it from us.
So I think that's, from an artist's perspective,
Yep.
you can see why this is a big deal, because it's not just, it's not just looking at something and saying, I'm afraid that this thing is going to take my job, or I don't like using this thing because it doesn't feel like art to me when it feels like management. Because I think that's another thing that, we haven't talked about that much, but an artist wants to directly manipulate the thing that they're doing. Sometimes you tell them, oh, well, now you don't do that. You just ask it to make this thing for you. That doesn't feel like art to a lot of artists. Some artists are fine with that. There's technical artists and there's non-technical artists. And a technical artist might be more used to that because they're used to kind of going through this like technology intermediated process to produce what they're doing. But a non-technical artist, like, they're in that business because they like the direct tactile work of making art. And so not only is it bad in that sense where they don't like it because they're like, I don't really want to use this and I feel like it's threatening my job. That's obviously bad. But then you add on top of that, oh, and by the way, it was your own artwork that they used to take your job from you without paying you anything extra and without asking you first. I mean, how do you not check the negative? Like it's obvious that that's just bad.
Nice about it. So also the CEOs
they're
get
not
there
nice.
and they're, hey guys, guess what? Guess what? We're putting all of white collar workers out of work. Am I right, boys?
Yeah.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
TJ.
Yeah.
TJ, you are, to be fair, TJ, that was a bit of a misinterpretation, okay? What actually happens is Dario first makes a really painful face and goes, I'm so sorry, but we're going to have some economic struggle, okay? We're just going to have to lose some jobs, okay? Some are going to have to go now.
And when I say we, I mean you,
sorry.
because I'm not
You're
interested
gonna
in
be a broke
struggling
boy.
at all.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to buy the cookies. You're a broke boy.
They always say, like, we're going to have universal basic income. My thing is, like, look, if
WorldCoin,
everyone at
one.
AI companies demonstrate that, all of you go on UBI first. Like, all of you go on a fixed low salary first, because if that's what you believe the future is, let's see it. Let's see you guys all be happy with that first and then sell it to the public, right? But they're like, no, actually, we would like all the really high salaries for us and everyone else can have the UBI. Like, it's just, it keeps getting worse every time, they step into these things. So I don't know. My opinion on that is, like, it's obvious why someone at GDC would check that box. I think that's probably going to be true for a lot of workers, not just game developers. It's just that game developers are, more exposed to this technology currently because they tend to be more technologically savvy than, say, someone working at an accounting firm randomly right now who maybe hasn't really seen this stuff all that much. Their firm hasn't started adopting it, whatever. The average worker may not have been encountering AI to the degree that a game developer has. So they're further ahead on that curve. That would be my answer, Prime. Dimitri might have a different take on this, but that's what I would say.
I completely agree. So the two points I would pull out, starting from the most recent one, is the accounting world has not been dragged through this yet, and they will. The HR world. So I happen to know someone who works on like apps for HR surveys and stuff like that. Like, we've all seen these like very tedious HR surveys, right? But all those were made by someone who had a job, which was like a HR survey designer. That's probably not surviving, at least not in the current form. And they don't, like, that world doesn't even know that this is happening yet, right? So all those other industries, the reason they're not yelling yet is because they just haven't been under the gun yet, right? And then the other thing was, I think Casey made this really good point about if your position in the art production pipeline is more editorial and composition, so you're not making the assets yourself. You have artists under you who are making the assets, and then you're doing editorial work or composition or something like. So someone's I don't know if art director is exactly the right word, but this is parallel to. The people in tech right now that I think see the biggest boost from what's happening right now is a technically trained project manager or product manager. And I know a couple of those guys who are talented enough to review their own code and understand when something is obviously stupid. And they seem to be doing plausibly good work. And so whereas they used to be managing 3 or 4 junior engineers, they just manage 20 clods or something, right? So anyway, this idea of if your position in the pipeline is editing, assembling, composing, like the big picture structure of somebody else's work. I think those are the people right now who are least disrupted and most benefited.
Prime, you look like you're about to say
Yeah,
no.
yeah,
Prime,
I'm waiting for Prime to
No.
unleash
I'm
here.
just-
There
I'm
was a
just-
stroke.
I'm considering his position, which is that I'm just playing through my head. Like, the biggest thing that I really enjoyed doing was not, in fact, managing juniors, but in fact, writing the code. And I've also had some of the hardest transitions in an AI world because I still just like writing the code, and I find it less, So I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I see myself in what you're saying. Is that there's a bunch of people, and now this is where the I call it the classical bullshit thing, which is that people say they're good at this, but I don't think you can review code and actually be good at it beyond a certain amount of lines per day. So it's like if you're reviewing more than like 500 lines of code a day, I just don't believe you. Like at some point there's some line that exists somewhere where you're just like, oh no, I really have to think about this.
it's
This is gonna
higher
be
than
real-
500.
Okay, 1,000, right? I mean, but people like I could.
Depends
easily
I think
on
what
the
buy
code.
Tej is
10,000 in a
trying to
couple
say
hours.
is like he can do, a
Yeah.
lot more lines of code than average. Is
And
what
they-
I think
they're-
Tej is trying to say.
Yeah, there's a study.
Maybe
or-
it's 500 for you, Prime. But
it
for
is 500 for
Tej-
me. I've
for
already
Tej, it's
admitted
like
many
10,
times I'm not good.
20,000.
Yeah,
No
10
problem.
to 20,000. There we go. That's closer.
No
That's closer.
Yeah,
problem.
there we go.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
why we call them. That's why we call them. JT and TJ. They're just mirrors of each other. Okay.
He
They know
reviews
that.
code, by the way.
Yes,
By the way,
exactly.
JT's Gary Tan, if you're wondering, even though it's GT.
Okay.
But let's see.
Oh, that was a stretch.
Yeah, he managed to get a
JT's
new
just
power
figured.
cable from the Best Buy. How's he doing? Did he get in
I
line
think he
there?
got his
Clock's running
USB-Cs figured
smooth.
Is
out.
he able to get that MacBook
Clock's
powered
running
up?
smooth.
Because
I think
the
he just
whole
bought a new
future of
one.
civilization is riding on Gary, and if he doesn't get that power cable, I think we're all in a lot of trouble.
If Gary's list don't keep listing.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys ever saw, there was a fantastic movie starring Ice Cube called War of the Worlds that came out recently. I don't know if
heard
any
of
of you
it.
saw this movie.
I watched it in 5 separate small clips. That's
All
what
right.
I've
Well,
seen of it. Yeah.
as you know, you think I'm joking, but as you know, the fate of humanity itself can very well hinge on one delivery of an Amazon thumb drive. So I don't think what I just laid out is all that far-fetched. Just go watch the movie if you don't believe me. It's a
I
documentary.
heard it was. That's what I heard too.
Yeah.
I just am super proud that Ice Cube was like, "Give me that bag. I don't care what's about to come out the other end. Just give me the bag." All more power to that guy. But what I
How
was gonna
many
say,
people do you think they asked before Ice Cube, who they like read the script and they're like, "Nah, I can't do this, bro. I cannot do this."
What are you
Probably
talking about?
more
No, in the
than
meeting
one.
they were like, "Do you think we can get Ice Cube for this?" Nah, he's never gonna do it. Well, just ask. What's the worst can
Just
happen? They went to Ice
ask,
Cube,
yeah.
and he was like, "Yes, I'll do it." They were like, "Oh my God, thank God we didn't have to go to Daniel Day-Lewis." Yeah.
all right, I
Anyway.
believe I have generally forgot what I was going to say, but
Sorry.
I will just at least.
You were
attempt-
saying there's a limit on code reviews.
Yep.
You're like
Yes.
you're saying you don't believe. You're
Yes.
calling bullshit is what
Okay,
you're doing.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. I forget where the professor was. I forget her name. I think it's Susan something or another. I just read it just 2 days ago. She's coming up with this
Crazy
term
last
called
name.
yeah, I know, cognitive debt. It is, and so instead of just being like tech debt, which is here's part of our code in which we know is really really bad, but we've kind of covered it up, and someday we're going to be able to come back to this and actually make it better. We can't add more features on this one side of our product. Cognitive debt is when you have like a senior leave your team, and then there's just a portion of your code base that nobody knows how it works. And so her whole argument is that these people effectively claiming that they're reviewing, as TJ said, 20,000 lines of code a day. Really, all you're stacking up is
I want to
cognitive
make it
debt.
clear. I'm not saying I can review 20,000 lines of code. Okay.
Yeah.
Just
All right, 50,000, 60,000,
Yeah,
whatever.
whatever
it is.
TJ
Right. That's way
200,000.
too low. That's
Yeah.
way too low for me, guys.
But you're getting this idea of cognitive debt, which is that we're stacking up something in which nobody knows how it works, and you now are only like your fate is directly tied to the performance of, say, Claude or ChatGPT or any of these programs, because you can't, like me as the human, eventually, like I can't even go in there and make a meaningful impact in a day anymore, because it's just like it's like me starting a brand new job at Google. It's like, okay, figure out the code base. You're like, I don't know. There's millions of lines at this point, and so. I'm just curious what the future is going to look like here in 6 months, because there's a lot of companies that are currently stacking cognitive debt, and we don't really know the outcome. I had a really good, insightful question here, but I don't remember what it was. So that was my best swing at what I was
I'll
thinking
just
of.
say too, really quick, Prime, that I was reading somebody talking about this problem, and one of the things that I thought was really insightful about it was they were talking about how, like, maybe even if 99% of the time the LLM can understand all of it and it works really good, like, there's so many catastrophic outcomes that can happen. Like, for example, let's say you're running a SaaS and someone depends on your site and something goes wrong, and then the LLM gets stuck in a loop and cannot solve, right? Which, like, everyone who has done this, it happens. It happens even on sometimes stuff where you're like, bro, it's literally it's right here. Like, I'll just make the change. I'll make the change. That's fine.
Put the tokens in the bag, bro.
These
We got
hands
this.
were not meant for anything besides prompting, but I'll still do it. These hands were built for Excel, okay? And so I'll tippy typey in the editor still occasionally, and it's like, but so then you imagine that, and then now you're like, okay, I need to run my agents in a loop. They have to do all this crazy stuff. No one can understand the code, and then it's like 3 weeks of downtime. Like, you'll just lose all your customers. They'll all leave. So there's like so many things where I feel like people are not applying like a proper level of like even just simple common sense, game theory. You can call it whatever you want to make it sound cooler. Orbital data center, and orbital data knowledge, if you will, to this problem where it's like, yeah, you can get to that point, but then what happens when something goes wrong? You like actually need to think about that if it's your business and not your hobby blog for Ruby on Rails boiling the lake, I don't know. Sorry, Dimitri, you were going to say something?
Let me just jump in really one quick second. Sorry, Dimitri. There was a paper just released right
The
here.
classic guest experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, sorry, me and TJ are talking, everybody. Be
Hey,
quiet.
hey.
Well, that's it for the stand-up this week. Sorry we didn't get to talk to the guests at all, but maybe they can come on again next week.
That's
Dude, we
actually
did
how
clip
we're
a
doing
section.
this.
We
Yeah.
did clip a section out to put on YouTube, and Bash happened to not talk a lot in that section. Like, guys, that was so rude. Bash never spoke that episode. And I'm like, no, she spoke a lot later. We had a whole segment for her, guys. Relax. But anyway, sorry. Prime, continue on the thing.
Sorry, I was just going to say they did release this paper. There are some holes with which like models they tested, but effectively the floor rate, the bottom rate that if you give it a document and can it retrieve answers out of it, its hallucination rate or its incorrect response rate was at 1.19% at the most bottom rate. And so this is out of these, like, and it gets worse as the context window gets open. So, like, just imagine what that means compounding in a code base. At some point, you could find yourself in a situation where, you, like TJ describes, where you're beholden to you somehow conjuring the correct context and the correct prompt until you can master this, or else you're just spinning tokens. And I've personally had this happen on a problem, so it's just a very exciting thing. And it was a very simple solution. All right, sorry. Go on, Dimitri. You're very, very smart.
So I'm just going to say that on exactly that, and connecting to what TJ was saying about the 300,000 line Ruby on Rails blog. I think people are easily kind of duped by confusing, is this thing like a software tool or is this thing like a personality? So sometimes I suggest this mental exercise. Whenever you get an AI output, I want you to ask yourself, if someone told me that they hired someone on Upwork to do this and they delivered it, how would I feel about it, right? So for example, if you hired someone to make a very simple, like 2010 era blog, and they showed up with 300,000 lines of Rails, you'd say something's wrong here, right?
But if there's 150,000 lines of tests, would you say there's something wrong there?
Quite likely.
Yes. Yes, I would.
Yeah, there's something wrong up here. There's something wrong up here, Prime.
Right. So this thing it's an inhuman artifact, right? So in the discussion with Casey, I was making this joke about like a 4 million line app to order pet food, right? And it was an exaggeration, but it's only like a factor of 10 exaggeration, right? Like a 300,000 line Rails blog is like at least 10 times the size it needs to be.
It's made to do this. That's
Right, it's made exactly.
The original
Yes,
thing
it's-
was Rails new blog or Rails.
Yes,
new-
exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's probably just a built-in thing in Rails to like have this happen. Yeah.
This was how people were like, "Holy cow, Rails is amazing!" Is DJH built a Rails blog on stage? I'm pretty sure. Sure that's the initial thing.
Yeah.
So you have this inhuman artifact, right? The 300,000 line blog, and you also now have to rely on an inhuman tool to do anything to it, right? So you're like, first of all, you could be screwed because the tool can't can't do it, right? As you were saying, that like it just spins and doesn't solve a very simple thing. You could just be screwed, and you're locked in, right? So you may not be locked into exactly the
Not
provider.
the good way.
Right.
Not like
Yes,
locked in.
not-
Right, yeah.
No, right? You are locked in somehow to using an AI tool to deal with it, because like, what engineer? Let's say that the blog goes down tomorrow, and it's a big tragedy. Lives are on the line somehow, and you go and try to get an engineer and say, like, we're going to pay you anything you want. We need you to dive into this 300,000 line Rails blog and solve this subtle problem. Who's going to do that? Or at what price?
Quick question, Casey. What would it cost to get you to
Yeah.
go solve the 300,000 line Rails problem?
So the answer is very simple. I'm going to message DHH really quick and ask him how much he would charge, and I'm going to add about $50 to it,
Nice.
and I'm going to do it as a pass-through.
Smart. I love that. This is a really interesting strategy for monetizing
Get
contract
someone who
work.
knows how to do it, and then charge slightly more. That's my
I
my
love
motto.
this. I love
Classic strategy.
That's my motto.
But I'm going to go ahead and guess that he will charge a lot of money. I'm guessing
will.
he won't be like $30. Like, I'm
Yeah.
guessing it's going to cost you a lot of money.
I interrupted you to ask Casey that. Go ahead, Dimitri.
So just riffing on that, I think one of the things that, so this is something I do with partial success in my own work, and I think many people are going to be doing this in the coming years, is working on driving AI outputs to something that might be human scale, right? So getting it to optimize for terseness or optimize for legibility in the human sense. I don't know of any well-established practices for this. Like, I basically just mess around with it until I get it into a state of, like, okay, fine, maybe I'll accept 15,000 lines of Rails for a blog. I'm definitely not accepting 300,000 lines, right? So I think that's definitely that's something that is coming because it has to, right? I don't, like, we're not going to be shipping 300,000 lines of blog. Like, every single blog is going to be 300,000 lines of, not just 300,000 lines of code, but 300,000 lines of completely custom code, right? So it's like, it's one thing if it's, I can't remember how big WordPress was. I saw someone do like a side-by-side of this thing versus WordPress. And WordPress was like, there are lots of like side modules and stuff, but they said that the core was like 150,000 lines, which, okay, fine, that's bloated as well, but whatever. But it's WordPress, and the whole world knows that code base. Like, metaphorically, the whole world knows that code base. So it's not 300,000 lines that not only does the whole world not know it, not even one person knows it, right? Not even Gary Tan knows it, right? So I just don't think that can work long term. And to play the other side for a moment here, like, everything here is new. There are growing pains. People try weird stuff.
Right.
Like, early in any technology, or even like in games, like the early 3D games all looked weird and played weird until people figured out roughly how to get like stick controls and cameras working reasonably. So some of this is just, people are working through the initial weirdness, and yeah, it's weird. So the part that I find a little frustrating is we could be a lot more honest about that, right?
Yeah.
We could just say, hey, look, I made this thing. It happens to work for me, this 300,000 line thing, but also obviously this can't be the path going forward, right? Like, we have this,
Or
has
at
to
least
be,
can't be the best thing possible, right? Like, probably the blog would still work at 200,000 lines of code. Like, it would probably
I don't know about that, TJ. Okay, this is the blog.
Yeah.
I guess I would add something to that, which is, this is, like, if I had to summarize my primary frustration with AI currently, it is sort of just the condensed version of the things that Dimitri was talking about, which is basically like, it's being adopted too soon. That's what, like, because it's a gold rush and everyone fears being left behind, and like, you've got to get on the AI train and all that stuff. The result of that is people are using it prematurely. So they're tackling things with it that should not be tackled. Like, they should be tackled in an experimental sense, right? So to be fair to Gary Tan, which is something I'm never going to do again, but
It's
to be
a
fair to
one-time
Gary Tan
only.
this one time,
Thank you.
no one gives a crap what he's doing, right? So like he makes a blog, it doesn't matter. That's not going to take down AWS, right? It's
We haven't seen how much rail code there is.
Also, we don't know. Maybe Kiro depends on the blog now.
So it's just like, fine. Like, that's actually, Gary Tan making a 300,000 lines of code blog is actually very harmless to the industry, I would argue. So it's actually not that bad. It's fun to kind of poke at him on this podcast or whatever, but like, actually, I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. Great. He's playing around with this thing and we're learning something from that, and hey, the results weren't that great, and maybe he's not ready to admit that yet, but like, we learned something from that, right? And that's all fine. Yeah. The worst thing is when Amazon starts using this at scale, and that was a bad idea, and now people suffer the consequences because the infrastructure gets more brittle, and all this other stuff. And so really that's most of it. It's like, I would much prefer if we could have done this in a way where we were validating that the AI could really do this better than humans for whatever the task was, and then we roll it out. That would have felt a lot more comfortable. And instead, we're very much riding the curve where like, oh, can an AI sort of maybe do this at all? Then we're doing that, like in production as the actual model. And I understand why people are doing that because of the gold rush sort of, or the FOMO sort of problem. They don't want to be the last company to adopt. I get it, but the problem is like, I think we're going to suffer a bunch over the next 2 or 3 years for no reason other than people, if they had just waited, like each task, if they just waited another 6 months or another year to like vet these things out and let the AIs get better at the same time and all that, we could have prevented it. They're riding just below where they should be instead of just above where they should be, right? I don't know how you feel about that, Dimitri, but that's kind of like the thing that I see being the bad part currently.
So it is perhaps worse even than what you are imagining right now.
Okay.
So multiple times.
Good.
So you're talking about within the tech industry. I very frequently work with industries that are not tech, right? I have worked with people who are in charge of various kinds of regulatory committees. And for example, they have a dispute about how a particular category of product, I can't say what it is, but a particular category of product should be regulated. And they'll say, well, maybe we should get the AI to write the regulation. And I have to talk them down and say, like, look, wait, like, stop right where you are.
Yeah.
You obviously have an extremely dangerous idea in your head, which is that this thing is smart in the way that you understand a human to be smart, and that when you ask it to write me 10 pages of regulations on the safe use of this device, that it's executing like human value judgments the way you might, right? And they don't know that, right? These are smart people, like lots of degrees, 30 years of industry experience. These are not stupid people, but they just have very dangerous mental models of what these things are and what they can do, right? So like,
they're getting told all the time.
Yeah,
this thing is literally God. This thing is literally God. It's impossible for it to make a mistake. It knows every book that's ever been read, every scientific fact of all time, and it can't be wrong. That's because me, Dario, or me, Sam, or me, Elon, or whoever, we're saying, yes, and I created God.
Yeah, and they say that exact thing to me, that, well, all the, all of the Federal Register, all the federal rules, right? All the Federal Register is in the training data, right? So it should know all the rules, and I can just ask it to generate. And it, like, I spend a lot of my time talking people down from these kinds of ideas, and the AI companies absolutely do not make that any easier, because they're obviously highly incentivized to say the opposite, right?
Right.
Like it's a lot harder. Like, and partly there's not a prisoner's dilemma, is a Mexican standoff, I guess, where if whatever Dario were to come out and say, actually, let's talk about having reasonable expectations. This isn't going to solve all your problems in life. It's not going to get you a girlfriend. It's not whatever, right? That person would almost certainly be then at a disadvantage, at least in the financial markets, compared to what Musk or Altman or Hasabi said DeepMind might be saying, right? I didn't mean to single out hit. Like, I think the problem is pervasive.
Equally, for each of them, they have this exact same problem, and they also need boundless amounts of capital to
Right.
execute on what their current vision is. No malice required. Just they think the way to get really awesome AIs to build $1 trillion of data centers. Well, they don't have $1 trillion on hand. They have to raise the capital, so they can't. That actually makes sense. It follows. Yeah.
Oh, and that's
Well,
been the
everyone
biggest.
is motivated by the same thing. Everyone is worried about being
Cars references.
in second, third place, fourth place, whatever, right? So if you're terrified of that and you think that it will justify, that justifies it, then the AI companies are behaving in that way for the same reason that the other ones are. It's not that funny, the Cars references.
It's just
He's being motivated only by Cars preferences. That's it.
But we know that about him. We know that he's only
just that Twitch chat noticing my joke always makes me laugh. Sorry, Casey.
Okay, so
I was done
I
anyway.
want to throw one thing out there that I think one thing that is kind of, I would argue is being massively understated in this is that it's not that I think all these AI companies and all these people are thinking that they're going to be losing their job and they have to be keeping up with the times or else they're going to be left behind and in the permanent underclass. I do think a large amount of people just don't perform that hard on their jobs. I've worked with plenty of people who they just want to really arrive there and do 3 hours of work, right? We've seen the TikToks. We know this just simply exists.
Sure.
And if you have something that's going to take the 30 minutes you would normally spend on writing an email and trim that down to 3 minutes, you can just compress your 4-hour workday into 20 minutes, and you're just like, why would I not press the easy button?
They're gonna press the button.
And
the button.
for me, it just seems like a very simple, like a large percentage of this is just like, oh, this just makes all the little like mundane things I do not in software world super, super easy. And for those that just don't care, and I mean, we've all worked with plenty of people that can produce amazing code, including myself. And then you produce this amazing, and you're just like, oh, dude, I can just easy button this one thing out. Easy button it.
But I don't think that's on an individual basis. That's like somebody individually who decides to use AI, and they're really not going to be the problem, quote unquote, because the problem comes from institutional adoption, right? That person is not really an issue for anyone other than like maybe, if you're getting slightly lower quality work because the AI isn't doing as good a job as writing the email, but it probably is. So like, I don't know that I'm that worried about even that. Because if someone was that checked out to begin with, like you say, how much worse is the AI really going to be? So the problem is more when you have this institutional adoption, because then what you're doing is you're forcing the people who were taking their job seriously to take it less seriously effectively, right? Because you're forcing them to use this tool and they may not be able to get the results that they want from the tool, and you're forcing them to use it and all of that stuff. And so if that's premature, that's, to me, the problem. I don't see it as being a huge problem if a lazy person just wants to use AI to make themselves even lazier, because they were already kind of a problem to begin with, and how much more of a problem are they really becoming? I don't know. That to me, anyway, that would be my gut reaction to that. But Prime, maybe you... I don't know. Maybe you disagree there, though.
It's not that, obviously the institution is the catalyst, but when, I don't know what percentage of people at these, super large companies tend to have a very large amount of checked out people. Yeah. It's just like a reality.
But they were already non-contributors, sort of, is what I'm saying.
They were sort of non-contributors, but they're also they also didn't make a big impact. Now they can move at a rate that is, unknown to them previously. And so now
they won't, because they're lazy.
They can make bigger impact than they've ever made before, right? They're like,
but
I'm
they
10x
can make
more
big
productive,
bad
and maybe
impact.
I don't want you to be 10x more productive. Like right now, I can tell you that I've had more problems on YouTube Studio than I've ever had in the last 5 years. I've had in the last year.
I agree
it's
with that.
almost like every single time I use that product, a new thing is just completely broken constantly, and it's just like I know Google is historically a place where you go not to work.
Yeah,
that's just one of a big thing of the general software. And I know there's some places in Google that are very rigorous and very difficult to work in. I'm positive that exists, but I've met enough people to know that there's a lot of coasting going on. And now there's a lot of changes happening, but everything feels broken. And I don't know what to attribute this to, other than hey, we've given a bunch of people easy buttons. Now everyone's moving at a rate faster than they normally would, but they still have the same decision-making level that they did before they went into it. Which is to me the dangerous part. It's I don't want you moving 2x faster. I want you moving one. I want you to move the same speed.
You could be right. That would be terrible if a bunch of people who don't really care are now suddenly doing a lot of quote unquote work, that would be very bad. Obviously,
That is
but I don't know.
what appears to be happening.
Okay.